neighborhoods, making sure that none of these homes catch fire and begin to spread. So you can just see all of the smoke that is pouring into this neighborhood in Lake Elsinore. Obviously, these folks are very, very familiar with fire. We've covered a lot of fires out here, and the Cleveland National Forest has some especially thick brush. When you compare to the fire that we were looking at last week in Mount Baldy, that was a lot lighter on those really, really steep slopes. But it's very, very thick here, so there is a lot of fuel for the fire. And if these winds are going to calm down, then the fire is going to do, its best to try to climb these slopes and use that fuel to expand. But at least it won't be expanding towards the homes there around Lake Elsinore.
And you can see that one more water drop right there. And, as we're talking about nightfall, and Desmond was talking about the hand crews that would be joining these firefighters in the air as well. We're talking about cutting lines so that they can actually get a containment around this fire. Extinguishing the fire is one thing, but getting a containment around it so it doesn't spread further is another thing, right, Mike?
Right, and that's what we talk about, and I think there's a lot of sometimes misconception about what containment actually means. Containment doesn't mean the fire is out. Containment means they have a hard line all the way around it. So when we talk, for example, tonight, the Park Fire in Northern California is 3% contained. That just means they have a line around 3% of it.
Right.
This fire currently, I believe, let me double check with CAL FIRE, but at last check was still at 0% containment, which does not kind of surprise me based on what they've got. I mean, they immediately kind of went into structure protection here because those homes down on the bottom were certainly their first concern as they started to do this. Because as Des mentioned, sure, it can go uphill, but that's almost a fight that they can fight in a little bit. They want to make sure that they can get the fire out by the actual homes and protect those homes. And excuse me, I'm just checking. Yeah, still 134 acres here on the Macy fire. So they're still continuing to work on that. No containment as of yet, that looks like. But, hopefully they'll get there, and hopefully it's starting to, push away from homes a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully they'll get there so that they can have the time right now before anything else happens, as those winds could pick up.
Right, and real quick, Susie, I just want to let our viewers know, anybody in that area, there is an evacuation center that has just opened, and it's at Elsinore High School in the 21,800 block of Canyon Drive in Wildomar. So they did open an evacuation center, again, because there are, a couple of neighborhoods that are evacuated as a result of this fire. And Elsinore High School is the evacuation center. It was at Lakeside High School, but they have moved it to Elsinore High School, 21,800 block of Canyon Drive in Wildomar.
All right, so as we take you live here to Lake Elsinore, we're looking at the Macy fire tonight. This started around the Macy Street area along with Orange Avenue, and that's where the mandatory evacuation orders that Mike was just alluding to are taking place tonight. When they say mandatory evacuation orders, it's not a suggestion, right, Mike?
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, California law you can't force anybody out of their homes, but it's certainly nothing to play around with. This isn't a let's wait and see situation. This is get out now. If you've been given that order, that go order is what they call it.
Sure.
It's an evacuation order, not a warning. They want you out of your homes.
And not voluntary.
And not voluntary, and not only for your safety, but for firefighter safety, right? They're going to be needed in the neighborhood streets, especially when it's this close to the homes, to use for fire apparatus, for hose, for hand crews, for all those other types of things. That's why even after the fire is, the flames are gone, they leave those evacuation orders in place for sometimes hours because they've got to move all their stuff. They've got to make sure that the neighborhood is safe to repopulate.
There's mopping up hot spots after that. I mean, there's so much to a fire. It's not just over when we see some flames extinguished like we just did right now. Right. This fire threatening this community near Lake Elsinore tonight, and obviously dozens and dozens and dozens of people under these mandatory evacuation orders out there, and these flames definitely being stopped by the quick work of firefighters both in the air and on the ground, although the rugged terrain has made it much difficult for firefighters to fight this fire from the ground. So they're trying to get as much air support in here before before the sun goes completely down, I'm certain, because obviously that makes it a little bit more difficult, and some agencies do not fly at night, as we know. So we've been seeing these water drops on some of the flames up in the hillsides, as we've been seeing, but we've been seeing these huge contingent of firefighters, as you can see all those engines just lined up and parked along that neighborhood there to keep those flames at bay should they come any closer.
Right, and Susie, and I just want to point out to our viewers, you're looking at this from a little bit of a distance, and that is because of the sheer amount of aircraft that are right above the fire for their safety. Our safety, we're looking at this from a little bit further back. I also want to point out that DC-10 that's coming from Sacramento is just about to pass over Corona. It's like in the Norco area right now. So they'll probably come over, do a quick survey, figure out where they want to drop. But we should see a pretty decent sized drop from that DC-10 coming from McClellan Airport in Sacramento County, now over in the Corona area.
All right, I want to go over to Danny Roberti for a look at the weather conditions for firefighters and the homeowners out there. Danny.
Yeah, so Susie, there's good news in this in that I'm tracking the conditions near Lake Elsinore right now, and it does look like those winds, they're not really strong right now. So we've got winds coming out of the south 5 miles per hour. I mean, thankfully, they are dying down. Earlier today, though, we had some gusty winds, relative humidity dropped, and today, again, was another scorching hot day. And I mean, the tough thing, we've been dealing with these elevated fire conditions mainly because this heat wave, it has been prolonged. I mean, this is our 7th day of seeing temperatures in the triple digits in many areas, well above average. So right now, I think the good news in all of this is that the winds are dying down. It's still hot out there. We're still dealing with temperatures in the 90s, but thankfully we're not seeing these winds to kind of fan out these flames, to kind of fuel or to reignite these fires. Of course, it is still dangerous in many areas. Now, what I'm also watching is what's happening next as we go into the next couple of days, because yes, there's good news in things cooling down, but at the same time, we are going to be looking at elevated fire conditions. And that's because these winds in these areas, they are really going to pick up. Tonight, though, it doesn't look like that. I'm tracking our future cast and what the winds are doing as we go into tonight. Everything is going to be calm all throughout the late hours. And as we go into early tomorrow morning, we're not dealing with much wind at all. But once we get to tomorrow afternoon, early in the afternoon, it's a different story for our mountains, our deserts, but especially right there in the Lake Elsinore community. We'll start to see those wind gusts picking up 20, 30, 40 miles per hour by the time we get to Friday evening. And that's really why we are continuing to see the potential, at least for these elevated fire conditions. And on top of that, it's going to be a little bit drier out there because we've had these thunderstorms the past couple days. That monsoonal moisture has been out there, and that's kind of helped, even though we have seen the potential for dry lightning in some areas. But now that moisture is out of here, things are drying out. And so that's why fire danger is going to be a little bit higher going into the next couple of days. But I've got to say, winds have died down in the most perfect timing. Not to say it makes it any easier, but at least we're not dealing with that element and that challenge right now. It's just tomorrow will be a different story, but hopefully they can get a good handle on this, at least as we go into the next couple of hours.
Danny, during fires, we often talk about sundowner winds here in Southern California. Was that a big concern today?
Not a big concern today, but that is going to be a big concern going into Friday night, Saturday night.
Okay.
So I think when I'm focused on with what's next, the sundowner winds are going to come into play going into tomorrow evening. So that's going to be, I believe, the concern with things being so dry, the sundowner winds picking up. But we are going to see temperatures dropping a bit. But even so, going into tomorrow, I know we keep talking about this cool down. I mean, it's still going to be hot out there tomorrow.
Of course.
We're still going to be dealing with triple digits in areas of the Inland Empire. Lake Elsinore is going to be dealing with temperatures in the 90s. And then we'll see a significant change going into Saturday. Not as hot as today, but I think the bigger concern will be those winds.
All right, what you're looking at right now is the DC-10 that Mike was talking about coming out of Van Nuys tonight, coming to fight this fire.
Coming out of Sacramento.
Sacramento, excuse me. Wow.
They ordered this. They realized the threat they had on their hands, and they immediately asked for it's called a VLAT, which is a very large air tanker. We've got those other ones that are a little bit smaller, do a good job, but these VLATs are just really huge. And they came out of McClellan. They'll do a drop, and I believe they can usually refill the retardant out of San Bernardino Airport. I believe they've got a base over there where they can redo that. But this will be able to drop an impressive amount of retardant on it, and they're getting it just at the right time. These will not fly at night. Okay. So as you can see in Desmond's shot here, we are losing sunlight quick.
So we'll they wanted to get this over here fast,
quickly,
and they did
before they'll lose it. So
wow.
Hopefully they'll be able to make a drop. Hopefully they're not in any kind of conditions where they won't be able to. But their first thing they're going to do is get over and kind of survey the area, survey the scene, and make sure that they in fact are able to drop. And hopefully we'll see that in a little bit.
Yeah, just an incredible resource. Whenever we see these planes in the air dropping water. We're going to keep an eye on the Macy fire burning right now in Lake Elsinore and bring you the very latest just as soon as we get any updates. In the meantime, more breaking news tonight, this time in Lancaster. Mike Rogers at the desk once again with an intense fire burning at a recycling center. Mike?
Yeah, Susie, I mean, this was the first fire we dealt with today, and it is just amazing. You see behind me here, these are cars at an auto recycling shop that are on fire. And I say are, not were, because of this hour, they are still burning. At last check, we had at least 1,000 cars that burned. I want to show you a little bit of video here from KCAL. They were overhead for much of the afternoon, that thick black smoke being pushed up into the air. LA County Fire doing the absolute best they could to try to get their hands on this one. We did send a crew up there. We've got our Tom Waite. I believe he's there with us, joining us live now from the ground in Lancaster, where the officials are still trying to get a handle on it at this hour. If we've got Tom, we can go to him now.
And good evening to you, Mike. Yeah, the fire is still burning here in this salvage/junkyard. You can see some of those flames and smoke still coming up from the area. A number of crews here. We're talking hundreds of firefighters on scene trying to make sure this is under control. Obviously, they've still got some work to do. This is a very dangerous situation given what they're up against. A lot of batteries, fluids, that could be fuel, all kinds of other things that are inside of these cars that have been left here in this yard. Of course, most of that stuff has been removed. This is a salvage yard, but that doesn't mean all of it's gone, and that's why we had such a dangerous situation playing out throughout the afternoon. If you take a live look here, actually this is some video that we were sent by a viewer here on scene, and he shot some video of a water drop that happened. It was just one water drop, and part of the reason for that is because of the high winds that were out here. So they had a hard time getting the chopper out here and dropping that water onto the scrapyard. What they did do was get ground crews out here and just douse and drown these cars and this debris with water. That was the idea, just to get as much water as they could on top of these cars. At first they said there were 30 cars on fire, then 100, then 300, and then it turned to a third alarm fire. It was a hazmat incident. They also had bulldozers out here and excavators to try and remove the cars out of the way so that more of them would not burn. There was also a wood pallet yard nearby. They were able to stop the fire from moving out there. And they also had thermal imaging drones out to try and help find the hot spots to get firefighters to the right places. We talked to one of the fire personnel on scene here. Take a listen.
You have combustibles such as rubber, gasoline, plastics. In some cases, you may have magnesium. There's also what we have is lithium batteries from automobiles like Teslas. So this is a very complicated fire, and it is just because of the cars that were stacked on top of each other that made it even more difficult.
They said they had about 1,500 cars at last count that had burned out here. Just to give you a sense of where we are, Sierra Highway and West Avenue H8, if you are familiar with the Lancaster area. They also say that they had, these hazardous materials. There was a shelter in place order that was for some of the homes to the east of this area. There's a neighborhood there. There was obviously concern about the smoke and what was being inhaled from this fire here, some of the dangerous chemicals that were burning. The good news is, though, the fire personnel here say they do have this fire in check, but of course they're going to be here throughout the night to make sure the situation does not flare up and that they have control of this throughout the evening. Reporting live in Lancaster, I'm Tom Waite, KCAL News.
All right, Tom, thank you. Really wild images coming out of there, Susie, and the wind was an issue as well. That's what was blowing the smoke into that neighborhood that he talked about. So luckily they're starting to get that under control.
All right, Mike and Tom, thank you so much. Well, Danny joining us once again. We made it through the peak heat.
Oh, my goodness.
And cooler temperatures are on the way, but for
Yeah.
these firefighters who are stretched thin and they're so busy right now, boy, it's going to be
Susie.
tough next couple of days.
It is going to be tough because even though things are cooling down and we're grateful for that, we're going to be dealing with elevated fire danger for a different reason, Susie. So we're going to jump right to it. I want to take a look at conditions right now. Thankfully, things in Lancaster are looking better. But my goodness, Tom mentioned it. One of the big concerns, it was the winds, and it's still gusty out there, mid-90s with gusts nearing 25 miles per hour. And then as we take a look at Lake Elsinore, still dealing with temperatures in the 90s. Thankfully, in this neck of the woods, we are seeing those winds subsiding, dying down to about 5 miles per hour. Sundowner winds is going to be a concern, though, going into tomorrow night. Thankfully, tonight is going to be calm, though. Let's talk about what's next, because today was our final day of extreme heat. Thank goodness for that. I mean, it has been 7 straight days of this dangerous heat. The cooling trend, it starts tomorrow. A marine layer is going to deepen this upcoming weekend. And yeah, our weekend, it looks good, but fire danger is still going to be high. Let's talk about the temperatures, though, because finally we are getting a break from all this. So LA, Orange County, we've been in the upper 80s, the low 90s this week. We get to Saturday, low 80s. This is closer to what's normal this time of the year. And then by Sunday, we're in the upper 70s. We haven't seen temperatures in the upper 70s in Los Angeles and Orange County since the middle of June, you guys. It's been more than 30 days. And in the Inland Empire, 90s all weekend. And I know this is still hot, but this is not the extreme. We are not talking about 100s in the Inland Empire, because that's what we've been dealing with. And it's all because high pressure, I mean, he's been a stubborn guy, finally going to start to make its move off to the east of us. It weakens. The cooling trend begins Friday, but what happens as this high pressure pulls away, it takes the moisture with us. I mean, we've been funneling moisture in. Things are going to dry out significantly going into this week. And before getting to that, let's talk about temperatures tonight, because things are going to finally start to cool down even at night into the early mornings. Tomorrow morning, still warm in the high deserts. We're talking 70s, but we're not talking those upper 70s, low 80s. 60s for everyone else. And tomorrow afternoon, this is the cooling trend. It starts. It's still warm, though. So we are still talking temperatures at 102 in Lancaster. But hey, we're not at 110. We've got 100 in Riverside, 102 in San Bernardino, 90s through Burbank and Pasadena, low 90s, though, and then 86 in downtown Los Angeles. So still slightly above normal. But that all changes going into the weekend, and everyone is going to feel that going into Saturday. 82 Saturday in LA and Orange County, upper 70s on Sunday, and then low 80s to kick off the new work week. In the valleys, another day in the upper 90s tomorrow, low 90s Saturday, and yeah, we drop into the upper 80s in the valleys. You were close to 108 earlier this week. 90s are back on Monday, though, and we start to slowly climb by the middle of next week. Inland Empire, 90s all weekend long. In the high deserts, we're out of the triple digits on Saturday, mid 90s. I mean, it's feeling 15 to 20 degrees cooler. Mountains, upper 70s, beaches, low 70s, marine layer in the morning, sunshine in the afternoon. Susie, coming up, we are going to break down for you hour by hour when those winds kick into gear this upcoming weekend. And we're going to talk more about that fire danger. That's next.
All right, sounds good, Danny. Thank you so much. The latest report on economic growth surprises even experts. Next at 8. And change is in the air at Southwest. What the airline plans to do for the first time in its history when we come back.
Nature knows best. That's why New Chapter Vitamins follows her example, transforming nature's 4 billion
The American economy picked up steam over the spring, growing 2.8% in the second quarter. The pace is actually faster than economists expected. Inflation also dropped close to the target rate of 2% as more people are spending more. But interest rates are still high and cracks
are piling up credit card debt, and we're starting to see the job market slow down just a touch.
Well, economists don't expect the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates when it meets next Wednesday. Checking the markets and your money tonight, a mixed day on Wall Street. The Dow closed up 81 points. The Nasdaq was off by 161, and the S&P 500 gave up 28 points. Southwest is known for single economy class cabins with open seating, but now the airline plans to offer premium seating that offers extra legroom. The airline says they conducted about 8 million boarding trial simulations and found more than 80% of passengers and potential passengers preferred assigned seating. They also found the lack of an assigned seating policy was a #1 reason why travelers chose another airline. An update on our breaking news tonight in Lake Elsinore, the fast-moving Macy fire, next at 8. Also, SAG-AFTRA preparing for another strike in just a matter of hours. The actors planning a walkout just after midnight, coming up.
This is where a string of arson fires have broken out since May on this apartment complex. I'm Jasmine Beal. Coming up here on KCAL News, we are talking to some of the tenants who say they are very concerned for their safety and what they say has been a lack of response from property managers.
I'm Desmond Shaw, SkyCal, and tonight we're over an historic site that's been called the very birthplace of Orange County, and it contains California's oldest building still in use today. OC Week continues on Look at This. That's coming up at 9 o'clock on KCAL News.
Back to our breaking news now in the Inland Empire. The fast-moving Macy fire threatening dozens of homes tonight in an unincorporated area of Lake Elsinore. That's where KCAL News reporter Nicole Comstock is live tonight. Nicole.
Yeah, Susie, the flames from the Macy fire were burning directly downhill very fast and right toward homes when this fire started at about 5:40 this evening. Right now, you can see that the flames are just flickering behind us in the hillside here. It does seem like CAL FIRE has a pretty decent handle on this fire because they hit it really hard with water dropping helicopters. We've seen a couple of fire retardant drops since we've been out here as well. But again, the danger still exists out here because embers, of course, could get inside of homes that are pretty close to where this fire started. It was all near Orange Street and Macy Street in Lake Elsinore, again at about 5:40 this evening. This was starting north of Highway 74 near the El Carrizo campground. That's where the first responder said they saw the fire coming downhill near that campground area very fast and decided they needed to make the call to get as many resources out here as they possibly could. The last we heard was that this fire was somewhere about 134 acres in size. And of course, that is always subject to change, particularly in this area. We have a unique weather phenomena called the Lake Elsinore effect, which a lot of people I see are talking about online, a lot of locals who know they should expect this anytime they have a wildfire. It basically creates hard down canyon winds in the afternoon heat. Of course, we know that it was very hot out here today, probably a little bit over 100. Then it reverses course at night, sending the fire back uphill toward the Riverside Orange County divide. Right now, that's a good thing because they want the fire to burn away from these homes that it started by. Again, a very strong air attack out here that seems to have slowed the fire down a bit. That's why we still have some evacuation orders out here because of that existing danger. We're hearing those orders are for properties south of Grand Avenue, east of Fairview Street, and west of Ortega Highway. But CAL FIRE has put out a really detailed map online for anyone who lives in the area and wants to see if their particular neighborhood needs to go. They are expecting the winds to continue dying down overnight, which, as we have mentioned earlier in the show, should help firefighters be able to get ground crews out here to start working on containment lines. But again, it's about 87 degrees out here right now, and it feels humid, so this is not going to be an easy or pleasant firefight on the ground for them. And it should be about 104 degrees out here tomorrow as well. You know, back out here live, people who live in this neighborhood know what it feels like to be through a really destructive, crazy fire. It was back in 2018, about 6 years ago now, almost exactly 6 years ago, that the Holy Fire started in August of 2018. And, you know, they were working on putting that fire out for about 5 months. I think it was about 23,000 acres in size, something like that. We had some structures destroyed, lots of people who had to evacuate at that time, and they do not want to go through the same thing again. So they're really hoping that crews can get a good handle on this and everyone can go back into their homes as soon as possible. The good news, we're not hearing about any structure damage, any damage to homes or injuries with this fire so far. Reporting live in Lake Elsinore, I'm Nicole Comstock, KCAL News.
All right, Nicole, thank you so much for that update. Now at 8, Metro making more improvements to the system, all aimed at increasing safety. And this comes one day after a stabbing at the North Hollywood B line station. KCAL News assignment editor Mike Rogers is at the desk. Mike, what kind of changes are being made? Yeah, Susie, some of them we've told you about before in the form of pilot programs, and now they're going to expand them, including the Tap to Exit program. That is currently the one that is being used at, ironically, that North Hollywood B line station where that stabbing happened yesterday. Now, what this is the Tap to Exit program requires riders to tap to get out of the station. There are people that are supposed to be monitoring that, and if they don't tap when they leave, they could be suspended. Other things could happen to them. We'll show you some video here as well from various Metro things that we've dealt with in the past here. But they're also going to include new restrooms, a program that seems so simple, but so impactful according to Metro, which is forcing the elevator doors at rail stations to stay open. That way nobody can be inside of them doing drug use or other nefarious things that may go on that causes that. They want to include pilot weapons detection technology at 2 of its transit hubs. So lots of small things that they want to do, that they want to expand here. And again, I mentioned, Susie, a lot of these things were pilot programs that they're now going to expand, including that Tap to Exit program, the weapon detection program, the elevator doors remaining open, some new bathrooms that are supposed to be self-cleaning and only have the door closed for so long.